Myra stepped off the small bus that had brought her to the snow-covered village. The cold air bit gently at her cheeks, and the crunch of snow under her boots was the only sound around her. She took a deep breath, letting the sharp, clean winter air fill her lungs. Her eyes scanned the horizon and found what she had come to see, the frozen lake, stretching wide and white, with the small pavilion in the middle. Its wooden pillars peaked above the ice, coated in frost, and it looked almost magical against the pale sky. Myra adjusted the straps of her backpack. She had come here to study the lake for her engineering project, but deep down, she felt a strange excitement she could not explain. There was something about the quiet beauty of this place that made her heart beat faster. She tightened her scarf and began walking toward the lake, her boots leaving neat prints behind her in the fresh snow. As she reached the edge of the frozen lake, she noticed movement near the pavilion. A young man was there, kneeling on the ice, brush in hand, sketching the landscape. His hair was dark, slightly messy from the wind, and his eyes were focused and calm. He looked completely absorbed in his work, as if the world around him did not exist. Myra paused, watching him for a moment. There was a certain grace in the way he moved, a quiet confidence that drew her attention. The young man looked up suddenly, his eyes meeting hers. Myra quickly smiled and waved, feeling a little embarrassed. He returned the gesture with a gentle nod and a small, friendly smile. Myra walked closer to the edge of the lake, careful of the ice beneath her. She could see the pavilion clearly now, its wooden beams sparkling with frost. The whole scene seemed almost unreal, like a painting come to life. "I didn't expect anyone else to come here today," the young man said, his voice calm and warm. Myra was surprised that he spoke first, but she found herself smiling. I'm here to study the ice," Myra replied. "I'm an engineer, and this lake has unique patterns that I want to understand. It's beautiful here." He smiled wider and stood up, brushing snow from his coat. "I'm Aaron," he said, offering his hand. "I like to paint and sketch. The lake, it inspires me." Myra shook his hand, feeling a spark of connection. "Myra," she said. "It's nice to meet you, Aaron." For a few moments, they simply looked at the frozen lake together. The silence was peaceful, broken only by the soft wind brushing over the ice. Myra felt her curiosity grow, not just about the lake, but about Aaron. There was something calming about him, something that made her want to know more. "Do you mind if I watch you sketch?" Myra asked hesitantly. Aaron shook his head. "Of course not. You can even try if you want." Myra smiled at the offer but shook her head. "I'm not very good at drawing. I stick to numbers and patterns." Aaron laughed softly. "Numbers and patterns can be just as beautiful as pictures," he said. "You just need to see them differently." Myra watched him work for a while, noticing how carefully he moved his brush, how he captured the subtle shadows of the pavilion and the way the sunlight reflected on the ice. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mix of admiration and curiosity. It surprised her because she hadn't expected to feel this way about a stranger. "Do you come here often?" Myra asked after a while. "Almost every day in winter," Aaron replied. "The lake is alive with shapes and light. It changes all the time. One day it's smooth and shiny, another day rough and glittering. You can never see the same thing twice." Myra nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. She too had noticed the patterns of the ice, the delicate cracks and swirls that seemed almost magical. "It really is special," she said softly. The wind picked up, and Myra shivered. Aaron noticed and offered her a small smile. It gets colder as the sun sets, he said. Be careful on the ice. Myra nodded, feeling both grateful and a little flutter of excitement at the attention. Thank you, Aaron. I'll be careful. They continued talking for a few more minutes, sharing small observations about the lake and the village. Finally, Myra realized it was getting late. She had to return to her small inn before the sun disappeared behind the mountains. I should go, she said reluctantly. It was nice to meet you, Aaron. You too, Myra, he said. I hope to see you here again. Myra smiled, feeling a warmth that had little to do with the cold air. I think I will, she replied. As she walked back toward the village, Myra could not stop thinking about the frozen lake, the pavilion, and the mysterious artist she had met. Something about this place, and about Aaron, had already begun to feel important. She didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of a connection that would change her winter in ways she could never have imagined. The next morning, Myra woke up to a soft blanket of fresh snow covering the village. Sunlight reflected off the white roofs and made the streets glow. She dressed quickly in her warmest clothes, grabbed her notebook, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, and the world seemed still and quiet, except for the occasional bird calling in the distance. She smiled to herself, thinking about the previous day at the frozen lake. Somehow, the thought of Aaron sketching in the pavilion made her heart feel lighter. As Myra walked along the snowy path toward the lake, she noticed a familiar figure ahead. It was Aaron. He was already there, standing near the edge of the frozen water, his sketchbook in hand. When he saw Myra, his eyes lit up, and he waved. Myra waved back, feeling a small thrill of happiness. Good morning, Myra, Aaron called as she approached. I didn't expect to see you so early. Good morning, Aaron, Myra replied, smiling. I wanted to see the lake in the morning light. It looks different, softer, somehow. Aaron nodded. It's my favorite time too. The sun makes the ice sparkle, like diamonds. He held out his sketchbook. Would you like to see yesterday's sketches? Myra leaned closer to look. His drawings captured every detail: the pavilion, the way the snow lay on the ice, and the gentle curves of the frozen lake. She was impressed. You are very talented, she said softly. It feels like I can almost step into the picture. Aaron smiled, a little shyly. Thank you. I try to show the beauty I see. It helps me feel connected to this place. For a while, they walked together along the edge of the lake, talking about the patterns Myra had been studying in the ice. She explained the cracks, the bubbles trapped beneath the surface, and how sunlight changed the colors. Aaron listened with genuine interest, asking questions and pointing out details that Myra had not noticed. She felt happy that someone appreciated her passion as much as she did. You notice everything, Aaron said, laughing lightly. I never thought ice could be so interesting. And I never thought art could capture it so beautifully, Myra replied. They both laughed, enjoying the easy rhythm of conversation. It felt natural, comfortable, and at the same time, exciting. As the morning passed, Myra and Aaron found themselves near the pavilion. The wooden structure rose from the ice, its beams sparkling under the winter sun. Myra stepped onto the ice carefully, testing its strength. Aaron followed, moving with the ease of someone familiar with the frozen lake. They reached the pavilion and looked around. It's peaceful here, Myra said, her voice quiet. Like the world has stopped for a moment. Aaron nodded. I come here to think, to draw, to escape the noise of everything else. And now, it's nice to share it with someone. He looked at her, and for a moment, the wind seemed to pause around them. Myra felt a warmth spread in her chest, the kind that made her hands tingle. They sat down on the wooden floor of the pavilion, legs dangling slightly over the ice. Aaron opened his sketchbook again and began to draw, while Myra took out her notebook. They worked in silence for a while, occasionally glancing at each other, sharing small smiles. The quiet companionship felt comforting and thrilling at the same time. After some time, Myra broke the silence. "Do you ever feel like the ice is alive?" she asked. "Like it tells a story if you look closely enough?" Aaron looked thoughtful. "Yes. Every crack, every swirl, it has its own life. I try to understand it through my sketches. And now, you're teaching me to see it in a different way, scientifically. It makes it even more fascinating." Myra laughed softly. "I never thought someone like me would teach someone like you." "Someone like you?" Aaron asked, raising an eyebrow playfully. "You know, someone who studies patterns, numbers, facts." "I'm not an artist," Myra said, shrugging. Aaron shook his head. "No, Myra. You have a different kind of vision. I can see it in the way you notice things. We just see the world differently, that's all." The conversation turned to lighter topics: favorite foods, childhood memories, and small dreams for the future. Myra realized she was talking more freely than she had with anyone in a long time. Aaron's gentle presence made her feel safe and happy. By the time the sun climbed higher, the village below started to bustle with life. Myra glanced at her notebook and then at Aaron's sketches. She felt a quiet sense of joy. This meeting had become more than just a study of the frozen lake. It was the start of something special, something she could not yet name. As they left the pavilion together, Myra felt the snow crunch beneath her boots and glanced at Aaron. He looked back at her, smiling. She knew, without words, that they would meet here again. And she found herself looking forward to it more than she had expected. A few days after their first morning together, Myra returned to the frozen lake earlier than usual. The sun was still low, casting long shadows across the ice. She wrapped her scarf tighter and looked forward to seeing Aaron again. As she approached, she noticed him already near the pavilion, moving quickly across the ice. Today, he was carrying an easel and several sketches. "Good morning, Myra," Aaron called, waving as she got closer. "I thought I could use some company while I paint today." Myra smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the cold air. "Good morning, Aaron. I'm happy to join. It's even more beautiful in the morning than I imagined." They walked together across the frozen lake toward the pavilion. Myra stepped carefully, testing the ice with each step, while Aaron moved with confident ease. "The ice seems thicker today," he said, pointing to small cracks that glimmered in the sunlight. "It's safe enough, but we should still be careful." Myra nodded. "I've been studying the patterns. Some parts are stronger than others. I can help find the best path." Together, they navigated toward the pavilion, sharing observations about the ice. Myra explained how the temperature had created small air pockets beneath the surface, and Aaron pointed out how the sunlight made the cracks look like delicate lace. They laughed at their discoveries, enjoying the easy companionship they were building. As they reached the pavilion, dark clouds began to gather in the distance. Myra frowned. "Looks like a storm might be coming," she said. Aaron looked up and nodded. "It could be snow. Let's enjoy what we can before it starts." He set up his easel and began sketching quickly. Myra took out her notebook and started taking notes on the ice patterns near the pavilion. The wind began to pick up, whistling through the frozen beams of the structure. After a while, the first snowflakes began to fall. At first, they were small and gentle, dusting the surface of the lake like powdered sugar. But soon, the flakes grew larger, and the wind became stronger. Myra shivered, hugging her coat tightly. Aaron glanced at her and raised an eyebrow. "We should head back," he said. "The storm might get worse." Myra agreed, and they carefully started walking toward the shore. The snow covered the cracks, making it harder to see where it was safe. The wind howled, and their footsteps left only faint marks before being covered again. Myra's heart began to race. She trusted Aaron's knowledge of the ice, but the storm made everything uncertain. "Don't worry," Aaron said, keeping his voice calm. "We just need to go slowly and watch our steps." Step by step, they moved across the ice. Myra noticed how steady Aaron was, how he seemed to sense the hidden dangers beneath the snow. She followed him closely, grateful for his calm guidance. When the wind pushed hard against her, Aaron reached out and held her hand briefly to steady her. Myra felt a spark, a warm connection in the midst of the cold. After a tense few minutes, they reached a thicker part of the ice near the shore. Myra let out a small sigh of relief. "Thank you, Aaron. I don't think I could have done that alone." Aaron smiled at her. "And I wouldn't want you to. We make a good team." The storm continued, but now they were safer, and they walked side by side toward the village. Snowflakes stuck to their hair and clothes, but neither cared. They talked quietly, pointing out patterns in the snow, laughing at the shapes they saw, and sharing small jokes to keep their spirits high. Myra realized how much she enjoyed Aaron's company, not just his skill, but his kindness and patience. When they finally reached the shore, Myra turned to look at the frozen lake behind them. The pavilion was now partially hidden by the falling snow, but it still looked beautiful, mysterious, and inviting. She smiled at Aaron. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said softly. Aaron nodded, returning her smile. "I'll be here. The lake will wait for us." Myra felt a quiet thrill in her chest as she walked back to the village. The storm had been a challenge, but it had also brought them closer. She thought about how much she trusted him, how comfortable she felt by his side. Somehow, the frozen lake and the pavilion were no longer just a place, they were a beginning, a shared space where something new and special was growing between them. As the snow continued to fall, Myra couldn't help but imagine what the next day might bring. She knew one thing for certain: meeting Aaron had made this winter different from any other, and she was excited to see where their growing connection might lead. The morning air was crisp and sparkling as Myra stepped out of the small inn. The snow had fallen softly during the night, leaving a fresh, untouched layer over the village and the frozen lake. She pulled her scarf tighter around her neck and adjusted her gloves. Today felt different somehow. She could not explain why, but her heart seemed lighter, and her steps quicker as she walked toward the lake. When Myra arrived at the edge of the ice, she saw Aaron already near the pavilion. He was carefully arranging his brushes and paints, looking completely at ease in the quiet winter world. When he noticed Myra, his eyes lit up, and he waved. She waved back, feeling a warm flutter in her chest. "Good morning, Myra," Aaron said with a gentle smile. "I thought I would try painting the pavilion from the center of the lake today. Would you like to come with me?" Myra hesitated for a moment, glancing at the ice. It looked smooth and solid, but she had learned to respect the lake. Still, there was a thrill in the thought of crossing the frozen expanse. "I'd like that," she said finally, smiling. Together, they stepped carefully onto the ice. Aaron led the way, pointing out areas that were safest. Myra followed closely, trusting his judgment. With each step, the world seemed to grow quieter, the snow muffling even the softest sound of their boots. The pavilion grew closer, its wooden beams sparkling with frost in the morning light. When they reached the pavilion, Myra paused to take in the view. The lake stretched endlessly, white and shimmering, and the sky above was a soft pastel of pink and gold. Aaron set up his easel and began to paint, while Myra sat on the edge, carefully taking notes on the patterns in the ice near the pavilion. After a few moments of quiet work, Aaron looked up at Myra. "Would you like to see something?" he asked softly. Myra looked up, curious. "What is it?" Aaron reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, neatly folded scarf. The fabric was soft, warm, and a gentle shade of blue. "I noticed you shivering yesterday," he said quietly. "I thought this might help today." Myra's eyes widened slightly, and she felt a rush of warmth that had nothing to do with the cold. She took the scarf carefully, brushing her fingers over the soft fabric. "Thank you, Aaron. That's very thoughtful," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Aaron smiled, a little shyly. "I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable. I enjoy having you here." Myra felt her heart skip a beat. She draped the scarf around her shoulders, feeling the warmth spread through her. "I enjoy being here too," she said softly, meeting his gaze. The winter air seemed to pause around them, the snow falling gently, the world narrowing to just the two of them. For a while, they worked in silence. Aaron painted the pavilion and the surrounding ice, while Myra studied the subtle cracks and patterns that the winter had left behind. Every now and then, their eyes would meet, and each time Myra felt a quiet thrill. She had never met anyone who made her feel both calm and excited at the same time. As the sun rose higher, they shared a small snack. Aaron had brought a few pieces of bread and some hot tea from a thermos. They laughed together as the steam from the tea mingled with their breath, forming little clouds in the cold air. Aaron handed Myra the thermos, and their fingers brushed briefly. Myra felt a spark at the touch, and neither of them moved their hands away immediately. "Winter makes everything feel magical," Myra said softly, her eyes on the sparkling ice. Aaron nodded, glancing at her. "It does. And sharing it with someone makes it even better." Myra smiled, feeling a quiet happiness she had never expected to find on the frozen lake. They spent the rest of the morning exploring small patterns in the ice near the pavilion, pointing out tiny cracks, bubbles, and reflections that caught their attention. The world around them was silent except for the wind, their laughter, and the soft crunch of snow under their boots. When the sun reached its highest point, casting long golden reflections across the ice, Myra realized it was time to return to the village. She looked at Aaron, feeling a warmth in her chest she could not ignore. "I should go back," she said softly. "But, thank you for today. It was perfect." Aaron smiled, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm glad you came. The pavilion, the lake, it wouldn't have been the same without you." Myra's heart fluttered. She turned toward the shore, but she knew something had changed. Their connection had grown stronger today, strengthened by the shared moments, the quiet gestures, and the warmth of simple care. As she walked back to the village, the scarf around her shoulders, Myra felt certain of one thing: this winter, this frozen lake, and this pavilion were no longer just a place of study. They had become a place of connection, of quiet discovery, and of the first gentle stirrings of something beautiful between her and Aaron. The evening was quiet, the village almost asleep under a thick blanket of snow. Myra had finished her work for the day and felt a gentle pull to visit the lake one last time before returning to her inn. The sun was low, casting soft golden light across the frozen surface, making the pavilion glow like a beacon in the middle of the ice. She wrapped her scarf tightly around her neck and began the familiar walk across the snow-covered path. When Myra reached the lake, she noticed a figure near the pavilion. It was Aaron. He stood silently on the ice, looking out over the frozen expanse, his sketchbook closed at his side. The wind ruffled his hair, but he did not seem to notice. Myra felt a quiet thrill. She had come expecting to study the patterns in the ice, but instead, she found herself drawn to him. "Aaron," she called softly, not wanting to startle him. He turned at the sound of her voice and smiled, a little shyly. "Myra," he said. "I didn't expect you here this evening." I couldn't resist," Myra replied, walking carefully across the ice. "The lake looks so peaceful. And I wanted to see the pavilion in the sunset light." Aaron nodded, his eyes following her steps. "It is beautiful tonight. And I'm glad you came." For a moment, they stood side by side, looking at the frozen lake and the distant horizon. The snowflakes fell gently, sparkling in the last rays of the sun. Myra felt a quiet calm, but also a flutter of excitement. There was something different in the air, something that made her heart beat faster. "Would you like to sit?" Aaron asked, pointing to the pavilion. "The ice is strong here, and we can watch the sun together." Myra nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Together, they stepped onto the ice, careful but confident. When they reached the pavilion, they sat down on the wooden floor, letting their legs dangle slightly over the frozen surface. For a while, they watched the sunlight shimmer across the ice, neither speaking, just enjoying the peaceful moment. Finally, Aaron broke the silence. "Myra, there's something I want to tell you," he said softly, almost hesitantly. Myra turned to look at him, her heart beating faster. "What is it?" she asked, her voice gentle but curious. He took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on hers. "From the first day I saw you here, I felt something special. I didn't know how to explain it, but I like you, Myra. More than a friend. Being with you, sharing this place, it feels right. I feel happier, calmer, and excited, all at once." Myra's heart skipped a beat. She felt a rush of warmth in her chest, and for a moment, she could not speak. Then, softly, she said, "Aaron. I feel the same. I I've felt it too, from the moment we met. I like you too." A gentle smile spread across Aaron's face, and Myra felt a quiet joy that she had never known before. The world around them seemed to pause. The falling snow, the frozen lake, and the distant mountains all faded into a quiet background. All that mattered was the warmth between them, the connection that had grown naturally over days of shared moments and quiet companionship. Aaron reached out and held Myra's hand gently. She felt the warmth of his fingers through her gloves, and a soft shiver of happiness ran through her. Neither of them spoke for a few moments, just holding hands and watching the snow settle on the pavilion beams. "You make this lake even more beautiful," Myra said softly, her eyes meeting his. Aaron chuckled quietly. "I could say the same about you." The sun dipped lower, and the sky turned shades of pink and purple. They stayed on the pavilion, talking quietly about their dreams, their favorite moments at the lake, and small hopes for the future. Each word, each glance, each gentle touch strengthened the bond that had begun with curiosity and had grown into something much deeper. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Myra realized that she had never felt so happy in her life. The frozen lake, the pavilion, the snow, and the quiet winter evening had all brought them to this moment, a moment of honesty, warmth, and the beginning of love. Finally, Myra sighed happily. "I should head back," she said softly. Aaron squeezed her hand gently. "I'll walk with you," he said. "And I hope we can meet here again tomorrow." Myra smiled, feeling a joy that went beyond words. "Yes. I'd like that very much." Together, they walked across the frozen lake toward the shore, their hands still intertwined. The snowflakes continued to fall, but they felt no cold. Only warmth, trust, and the quiet happiness of two hearts discovering each other in the stillness of winter. The days after their confession were filled with quiet joy for Myra and Aaron. Each morning, Myra would wake to the soft winter light and think eagerly about the frozen lake. She had never felt such excitement to return to a place before, and every thought of Aaron brought a smile to her face. That morning, she wrapped herself in her warmest clothes and scarf, carrying her notebook and a small thermos of tea. When she reached the lake, Aaron was already there, kneeling on the ice near the pavilion. He looked up and grinned when he saw her. "Good morning, Myra," he called. "I've been waiting for you. The lake looks amazing today. Would you like to explore the patterns together?" Myra nodded eagerly. "Yes. I want to see everything." Carefully, they stepped onto the ice, side by side. Aaron led the way, pointing out interesting cracks and swirls. Myra studied the shapes and explained the bubbles trapped beneath the surface and how the ice reflected the sunlight. Aaron listened intently, clearly fascinated by her observations. Myra realized she had never met anyone so genuinely curious about the things she loved. They laughed and shared small discoveries as they walked. Myra spotted a section of ice that glimmered in blue and silver, and Aaron sketched it quickly, trying to capture the colors and patterns. Myra showed him the scientific explanation behind the bubbles and lines, and Aaron nodded, impressed. "This is amazing," Aaron said. "I never realized ice could have so many details. You see the world in a way I've never seen before." Myra blushed slightly. "And you make it feel alive. I can see the beauty in ways I couldn't before because of your sketches." After exploring the ice, they returned to the pavilion. Aaron had brought a small blanket and spread it on the wooden floor. They sat together, sipping warm tea and sharing a small snack. The steam rose from the thermos, curling into the cold air, and for a moment, they both felt a quiet happiness that had nothing to do with the cold outside. "You know," Myra said softly, "I never expected to feel so connected to someone in such a short time." Aaron smiled, his eyes warm. "Me neither. But it feels natural, doesn't it? Like we've known each other longer than we actually have." They spent the afternoon exploring hidden corners of the lake and the surrounding snow-covered trees. Aaron taught Myra how to notice patterns quickly for sketching, while Myra showed him how to identify the safest ice paths and the subtle signs of cracks forming beneath the surface. They worked together seamlessly, their friendship now strengthened by trust, teamwork, and the gentle warmth of love. At one point, Myra noticed a small bird struggling in the snow near the edge of the lake. She pointed it out, and together they carefully approached it. Aaron gently picked it up while Myra cleared a small space in the snow. They placed the bird in a safe spot, where it could shelter until it regained strength. Myra looked at Aaron and smiled. You always know how to handle things with care. And you notice what others might miss, Aaron replied, smiling back. We make a good team, Myra. As the day went on, they returned to the pavilion to rest. The sun began to lower, casting golden light across the frozen lake. They sat quietly, sharing stories of their childhood, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. Each laugh, each glance, each gentle touch strengthened the bond that had begun with curiosity and friendship and had grown into love. Myra realized that these moments, simple, quiet, shared experiences, were more precious than anything she had imagined. The frozen lake, the pavilion, the snow, and the soft winter light had become a canvas for their connection. Every day together deepened their feelings and made the cold air feel warm. When it was time to return to the village, Myra felt a gentle reluctance. She did not want the day to end. But Aaron squeezed her hand and said softly, "We'll come back tomorrow. The lake will wait, and so will I." Myra smiled, feeling a happiness that went beyond words. "Yes," she said, "we'll return. Together." As they walked back toward the village, the wind carried the soft crunch of snow beneath their boots. They talked and laughed, but the warmth of their shared silence was just as important. Myra knew that these days at the frozen lake, with Aaron by her side, were moments she would always treasure. They had discovered more than beauty in the ice. They had discovered the joy of connection, the thrill of understanding each other, and the quiet power of love that grows naturally, day by day, in small gestures and shared adventures. Winter was nearing its end, and the frozen lake shimmered under the soft morning sun. Myra had spent the last few weeks at the village, enjoying every day with Aaron. Their walks across the ice, shared sketches, and quiet conversations at the pavilion had become the highlight of her winter. Today, she knew, would be different. It was the last day she could stay before returning to the city, and she felt a gentle pang of sadness mixed with excitement. When she reached the lake, she saw Aaron waiting near the pavilion, his sketchbook under his arm. He looked up and smiled, the sunlight catching the sparkle in his eyes. "Myra," he called softly, "I've been waiting for you." "Good morning, Aaron," Myra said, her heart lifting at the sight of him. "The lake looks beautiful today." Aaron nodded, glancing toward the pavilion. "It's even more special when we're here together. Shall we go?" Carefully, they stepped onto the ice, walking side by side toward the pavilion. The ice beneath them was smooth and strong, and the frozen surface reflected the morning light like glass. Every step felt familiar and comforting, yet thrilling because they shared it together. When they reached the pavilion, they paused to take in the view. The wooden structure rose from the ice, frost glinting on every beam, and the vast lake stretched beyond it, quiet and perfect. Aaron set down his sketchbook and turned to Myra. "I wanted today to be special," he said. "Because, it's our last morning here together for now." Myra felt a warmth spread through her chest. "It is special," she said softly, "because we're here together." They sat on the edge of the pavilion, letting their legs dangle slightly over the ice. The sun cast long golden reflections on the lake, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For a while, they were silent, simply enjoying the quiet winter morning and the feeling of being together. Then Aaron reached into his sketchbook and pulled out a small painting. He handed it to Myra carefully. She opened it and gasped softly. The painting showed the pavilion, the frozen lake, and two figures standing hand in hand in the center. Myra looked at Aaron, her eyes wide. "I painted us," Aaron said quietly. "To remember these days, and to promise that we will come back here, every winter, no matter where we are. Myra felt tears of happiness prick her eyes. It's beautiful, she whispered. I'll treasure it forever. She leaned closer, and Aaron's hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. The wind whispered softly across the lake, and Myra rested her head lightly on Aaron's shoulder. I never imagined a winter could feel like this, she said, her voice gentle. It's perfect. Aaron smiled, brushing a small fleck of snow from her hair. Winter has been perfect because of you, Myra. Every snowflake, every crack in the ice, every quiet moment at the pavilion, it's all been more special because we shared it. For a while, they stayed like that, enjoying the warmth of their hands, the closeness, and the quiet beauty around them. The pavilion seemed to glow with their happiness, and the frozen lake reflected not only sunlight but also the gentle bond that had grown between them. Eventually, Myra looked out at the horizon. I'll miss this place, she said softly, and I'll miss you when I go. Aaron squeezed her hand gently. And I'll miss you too. But this is not the end. We'll return. And until then, we carry these moments with us. Myra smiled, feeling a sense of calm and joy. Yes, we will. And when winter comes again, we'll be back here together. The sun climbed higher, and the ice beneath them sparkled like crystal. Myra and Aaron stood up, brushing snow from their coats. They held hands as they walked back across the frozen lake toward the shore, each step steady and full of promise. The wind carried the soft crunch of snow beneath their boots, but neither felt the cold. Only warmth, trust, and the quiet happiness of knowing that what they had found in each other would endure. As they reached the shore, Myra turned to look at the pavilion one last time. It stood strong and beautiful in the middle of the frozen lake, just as it had been when they first met. But now, it was also a symbol of their connection, of shared memories, and of love that had grown naturally, patiently, and beautifully. Aaron squeezed her hand once more. Promise me something, he said gently. What is it? Myra asked. That no matter where we go, or what we do, we'll always return here. To this lake, to this pavilion, to each other. Myra smiled, her eyes bright. I promise, Aaron. Every winter, we'll return. They stood together for a moment, hand in hand, feeling the quiet magic of the frozen lake around them. The pavilion, the ice, the snow, and the soft winter light had witnessed the beginning of something wonderful, a love that was warm, gentle, and lasting. And as Myra and Aaron walked back to the village, their hearts were full, knowing that this winter was only the first chapter of many winters to come, shared together, side by side, forever.